Hey, we're back on the Press Box Podcast, episode number 29, if you're counting at home. Hi, I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. My other co-host, Joseph Miranda, will be joining us shortly. And we're taping this on Christmas Eve, 2018. Want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. By the time you're listening to this, Christmas will be over, but it's still the Christmas season. We hope you had a great Christmas day. And we want to wish you all a very Happy New Year coming up in the next few days. Very busy time in the sports world right now between Christmas and New Year. We've got lots to talk about today on episode 29. We're going to start out by talking a little bit about baseball. The hot stove is starting to heat up, and we'll get even hotter here in the next few weeks as we get into January. We're going to talk some about the trades and some of the free agent signings that have happened and may happen. We're going to talk a little college football playoff preview coming up this weekend. We've got number 1 Alabama against number 4 Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, and number 2 Clemson against number 3 Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl. We'll talk about those matchups and what each team needs to do to win and what we think our predictions will be. And then, of course, we're going to talk NFL playoffs as well. The playoffs are just about set. 5 teams are already in the NFC. We've got 4 teams in the AFC. So we've got 3 spots left and roughly about 5 teams vying for those 3 spots. So we'll talk a little bit about the jockeying for position there and what we think might happen. So lots to talk about today on the 29th edition of the Press Box Podcast. We want to thank everybody for joining us in our first year. It's been a little over a year now. We started this back in November of 2017. We appreciate all your listening, and follow us on Twitter. Remember, at PressBoxPod. That's at PressBoxPod on Twitter. We also appreciate your comments and suggestions as well, and we hope you enjoy today's edition of the Press Box Podcast.
All right, so let's start today's podcast with a little bit of MLB baseball talk here. Since we've had our last podcast, the winter meetings have happened, and there's been a fairly good amount of deals that went down. Not only deals involving player trades, but some guys signed as free agents, some guys got let go. Let's start with the Yankees. As many of our listeners know, is your favorite team. First things first with the Yankees here. They came out and said that I think they weren't necessarily interested in Harper because six outfielders. So we'll start there. Harper obviously being the biggest name free agent this offseason. Do you think he's a good fit? And do you think they'll ultimately sign him, being as how, obviously GMs send out smoke screens and things of that nature from time to time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the fact that the Yankees have 6 outfielders is not material. It's immaterial. I mean, you've got Judge in right field, you've got Aaron Hicks in center field, you've got some combination of Brett Gardner or Giancarlo Stanton in left field, and then you've got Jacoby Ellsbury, who really didn't play much at all last year, but he's still under contract. But that doesn't matter. I mean, Bryce Harper is a once-in-a-generational type player. He's 25, 26 years old, so he's going to be around for a long time. We all know that Yankee Stadium is tailor-made for his left-handed swing. So I think that if the Yankees have a chance to get him, you get him. I mean, they re-signed Gardner to a 1-year deal. You can trade Gardner. You could trade Ellsbury. You might have to eat some of that salary, but you definitely could trade him. And I think Harper could fit in the mix pretty well. There's been some talk about him playing first base, possibly, because the Yankees really don't have a first baseman. And, of course, Cashman made the comment that you don't spend that kind of money on a first baseman. Well, that's beside the point.
They did that with Jason Giambi.
They did it with Giambi. That's exactly right. So, I think it could be a smokescreen. I mean, even Scott Boras, Harper's agent, has said that the Yankees were interested. So who knows what's going on there. The Yankees have shown a lot of interest in Manny Machado. I think he visited the Yankees here last week on his free agent tour. But, and the reason they want Machado, obviously, is 1, he's a great player, but 2, their regular shortstop, Didi Gregorius, had Tommy John surgery, so he won't be back till no earlier than July, maybe even August. Right. So they'll need a shortstop.
Yeah, and we talked about that too. Which I agree. The move there is sign Troy Tulowitzki,
exactly.
who the Blue Jays released, who the Blue Jays owe him the rest of his deal there because it's guaranteed. So, but he's a free agent, so the Yankees can sign him for very minimal dollars compared to what they're paying other free agents.
Right.
See what he's got left.
Right.
Until Gregorius can come back, and best case scenario, he shows something. Right.
Right.
And you can use him then as possible trade bait at the deadline when Gregorius is healthy, right?
Exactly.
So maybe you get a reliever, some type of pitching, and you package together a deal to help you there. And now you've turned Tulowitzki, who's a free agent right now, into an asset that you can trade. And then I agree. I think you go ahead and sign Harper because my biggest thing is the left-handed power bat at Yankee Stadium.
Right.
I think his potential there is 50, maybe even 60 home runs if he gets hot in a season like he had in 2015.
Right.
So I think that's great for them. Pitching wise. They signed Happ. They re-signed Happ. Okay, I think that was good. I can't remember. Did we mention Paxton in the last podcast?
Yeah, I think we did. I think that trade happened a while back, but still, that's another asset they added.
So you've got Severino, Paxton, Happ, Tanaka, and then Sabathia. They're right back in a 1-year deal.
Right.
And I've said this before too, but I like what they did. I know they didn't look like they've done a ton so far, but then again, they're a team that won, I've said this 99, 100 games last year. So maybe you don't need to have a total rehaul. I mean, I don't think the Red Sox are going to be as hot next year. You can't count on them winning 108 games again. They're most likely going to come back to the pack a little bit. So even if they win 95 to 100, the Yankees are right there competitive with them. So, but like you said, it comes down, I guess, when they play them in a series, which is likely. So what do you think that as they stand now, like we said, they could sign Harper or somebody else. As they stand now, do they match them any differently in the Red Sox than they did in the playoffs?
No, I don't think they do. I mean, we had this discussion a little earlier, you and I, and your points are all well taken about the Yankees winning 100 games and the Red Sox possibly cooling off. But the Red Sox won 108 games last year. Let's say they win 98 next year. Okay, let's say the Yankees win the division and the Red Sox get in the wild card game. All right. If the Red Sox win the wild card game, they're going to play the Yankees. All right. The only difference is that the last 3 games, the game 5 would be in New York instead of in Boston. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's fine.
Right.
But the Yankees, to me, have not done anything to show me that they have been able to overtake the Red Sox. Their lineup is going to be exactly the same. All right. And their pitching is going to be exactly the same, with the exception of Paxton that they added in place of Sonny Gray, who they'll probably try to trade.
Right.
All right. So I don't see that being a big change. All right. Let's say they even pick up Machado. Okay. Machado is really, to me, is not going to give you any more quality at bats in the playoffs than Didi Gregorius did. So I don't see what they've done. I think pitching is what they're going to need because They came out of Boston last year, won it even at 1-1. They won a game in Boston. They go back to New York for game 3, a crucial game 3, and they lose 15-1. I mean, they were out of that game in the 3rd inning. So that tells me that you got to have pitching that can keep you in a game like that so you have a chance to win that game late and take a 2-1 series lead. And then after that, the next game, they got blown out as well. I mean, it wasn't 15-1, but they got beat pretty soundly. Right. So I have not seen them do anything to me, in my mind, that tells me that they've gotten better than the Red Sox. I don't even think they're better than the Astros. I mean, I think even had the Astros upset the Red Sox, or let me take that back. Even if the Astros would have been the team the Yankees played instead of the Red Sox, I don't think they would have beaten the Astros because of the Astros pitching and hitting.
I agree.
So, to me, and you can argue that there are not any quality pitchers out there that they could have gone after and thrown a lot of money after.
I kind of liked Corbin, but
you did.
Then again, we don't really know what happened. Maybe they offered him a deal and he just chose the Nationals.
That could be. That's exactly right. Or maybe he wanted a longer deal than the Yankees were willing to offer them, and that's fine. But you still have to do something to upgrade your pitching. I mean, that was really the key to the whole thing, was the pitching. Because that's what the Yankees have struggled with the last few years. Right. I mean, Tanaka, you never know what you're going to get with Tanaka one game to the next. CC Sabathia is just a bridge. And Severino, we're still not sure if he's going to be he started out great last year and then faltered down the stretch.
Yeah. Right. The Yankees definitely will be interesting. Like we said, they may not be done. We could see some signings and things like that. As far as trades go here, The big one that happened recently was the Reds and Dodgers.
Right.
The Reds bringing in Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp, and Alex Wood from the Dodgers for Homer Bailey and a couple minor league players.
Right.
I like this trade for the Reds. I think that they definitely upgraded their outfield. I mean, you've got they chose not to re-sign Billy Hamilton. He signed with Kansas City, so you can open up a spot there. I think Kemp's got a little left. He showed a little bit of resurgence this year in LA, and Puig's going to be pretty productive. He hasn't really had a terrible year out in LA. I mean, he's been up and down a little bit, but you pretty much know what you're going to get. He's going to be a productive player.
Right.
So I like that. I think they won that trade, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And you know, you and I were talking about this with our producer the other day. But you know, why would the Dodgers make this trade? Well, it's obvious. They were dumping salary.
Right.
I mean, you know, they didn't really want to win the trade. They wanted to dump salary.
Right.
And the Reds got a good deal. I mean, they got 3 quality players.
Yeah.
The Alex Wood for Homer Bailey is definitely an upgrade. And you got 2 quality guys that can help you in the outfield. So, yeah, it was a great trade for the Reds. And the Dodgers frees up some salary cap space for them to go after, you know, Harper if he doesn't sign with the Yankees or somebody like that. So, yeah, it was a good trade all around for both parties. And I think it gives the Reds, I mean, I think you brought this up, it gives the Reds a chance to possibly be in the mix late in September with a chance to maybe get in that wild card game.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the last couple of years with the 2 wildcard teams, opens up a lot of space.
Exactly.
For teams like the Reds. See some other notable signings. McCutchen to Philadelphia, former National League MVP there.
That was a good move.
Yeah, and do you think that says one way or another how they feel about possibly going after Harper? I guess there's room for both of them out there.
I think there is.
They said going in they planned on spending a lot of money. So
yeah.
You know,
I think their quote was they were going to spend crazy money.
Even if it's a little dumb.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think McCutchen and Harper, I don't think there's any connection between that. I think they could still go after Harper pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Harper wants to go to Philadelphia, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
In my opinion, might as well stay in Washington. It's like, not only are the cities maybe 90 miles away, a little over, but it's like, seems very similar. I don't know why you'd make that move.
Well, exactly. But I think, you know, look at it this way. I mean, the Phillies' money is as green as anybody else's money, right? Okay, so if all you're after is the money, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
But to me, you know, if you want the ring, if you want a chance to win a championship, I think, you know, you're going to go somewhere like the Yankees. You know, you're going to go to the Red Sox. You're going to go to maybe the Dodgers or the Astros or somebody like that. The Phillies, to me, I mean, yeah, they were in it some last year, but they faltered down the stretch pretty quickly. And I just don't think the Phillies can make a push. I just don't think they're the team that's going to go anywhere. I think the Braves are an up and coming team. They made some moves, the Braves, to bolster their pitching staff. They're not going anywhere. And the Nationals, you know, they picked up Corbin. They signed Patrick Corbin. And who was it that signed Roark?
The
Reds, that's right. So the Reds got Roark. That's in a trade. Okay, so, you know, the Nationals right now are kind of treading water. You know, I mean, they really haven't done a whole lot. They picked up one pitcher, lost another one. But they're going to be in the mix probably. And especially once Harper makes his decision, if it's not to come back to the Nationals, then obviously the Nationals are going to take that money and probably spend it on some other people.
And I like the Nationals rotation. If those guys stay on their game, you know, Strasburg, Corbin and Scherzer. That's a good 3-man rotation.
That's an excellent
good top 3.
Yeah. You put that rotation with the Yankees lineup, and the Yankees will win 140 games. You know, I mean, I know I'm being facetious, but yeah, that's the key. The Nationals just have not had the production out of their lineup that they probably would have liked to have last year. I'll tell you another team that was interesting this year was the Mets. I mean, the Mets have done some things that have been interesting. They've made some trades.
Did we talk about Cano in the last time that we might?
I don't know. I don't think we did. I think that came after the fact. But yeah, they did. They picked up Robinson Cano and I forget the name of the closer. But
Familia. He was.
Well, but the guy from Seattle. They also got Seattle's closer.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we'll think of his name here in a minute. But they got those 2 guys from Seattle. They also re-signed Jeurys Familia, who was with them last year, and they traded him at the deadline to Oakland. So now you got Jeurys Familia, who no longer has to close, but he can come in and be the setup guy for the guy they picked up from Seattle, who I'm sure you'll have the name for us here pretty quickly.
Diaz.
Diaz, exactly. So he's a quality closer. They got Robinson Cano, who's going to give him, outside of his suspension for PED use, he's going to give you 150, 153 games a year. He's going to probably hit you 30 home runs and knock in 100 runs. So, and they also signed Wilson Ramos, the former catcher for the Nationals that had been at some other places. And that was one of their weak spots, was catcher. They had been interested in JT Real Muto from the Marlins,
Right.
but obviously it looked like they weren't able to get that deal done. So they got Wilson Ramos, and who knows? They may still get somebody else. They've got the Cy Young Award winner in the National League in Jacob deGrom. They've got Noah Syndergaard, who's a talent if he could just stay healthy. So they've got a pretty decent pitching staff, and they got a pretty decent back end of the bullpen now. So I think the Mets can make a run in that division as well.
I agree. You gotta think that Syndergaard. I was blanking on
Right.
that for a second. He's gonna have another good year. DeGrom, like we said, they can ride those two guys to some good starts. Those bullpen pieces fall into place. Cano's gonna hit. I mean, he always hits.
Right.
Even if you want to argue that he got suspended for the PEDs, after he came back, he still hit. I think right around 300 for the last however many games. So
Right.
like you said, he always hits. That's a good bat to add. And the Mets are just as in it as the Braves and Phillies are right now, I think.
Well,
sure.
I mean, here's what you look at these teams. I mean, you look at who wins the World Series every year. I mean, or who has won the World Series. Right. Okay, I mean, it's all been about pitching. I mean, you've got to have pitching. I mean, if to me, I think teams, especially the Yankees, for some reason, get enamored with these power hitters.
Yeah.
And if I was the Yankees, I know this is probably blasphemy to them, but I would have traded. They knew the Mets needed catching. I would have traded Sanchez, the catcher, to the Mets for Syndergaard and for some other guys. All right, because you can always find a catcher that can hit you 250.
Right.
All right, but you can't find a pitcher that's going to win you 21 ball games.
Right.
All right, and when you get in a short series in the playoffs, you've got to have pitching. I mean, you have got to have it, and that's what I don't like about the Yankees, and that's what I don't like about some of these other teams, is that they don't seem to understand the value of pitching. And the Mets do. Unfortunately for the Mets, they've had some injuries.
Right.
They haven't been able to stay healthy, and you can't do much about that.
Definitely. Another pickup or trade I really liked was the Goldschmidt trade to the Cardinals.
Yes.
I think that's going to help them tremendously because if you look at the Cardinals in the recent history, they haven't really had like that big bat in the middle of the lineup. They've kind of been piecing it together with guys here and there.
Right.
Molina's been there. He's been a pretty steady force, but they haven't. Like I said, that's just the guy they can set in the middle who's a superstar type player who's going to hit you 40 home runs. And Goldschmidt's definitely that guy from Arizona.
They picked up. Look and see real quick. I saw something come across the wire, and I forgot what it was. But they picked somebody else up here in the last week or so that I thought, wow, that's a pretty good pickup right there. And when you combine that with Goldschmidt, the Cardinals obviously are going for it, and I think that they could be a real factor in that Central Division this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. I'm trying to see what else they picked up.
I mean, it's probably. I wish I could have remembered what it was, but yeah, the Cardinals. I mean,
Andrew Miller.
Andrew Miller.
Yeah.
That's exactly right,
Yeah.
and that really shocked me when I saw that, and I thought, wow, Andrew Miller. He stays healthy. Now you got a guy from the left side, throwing from the left side. They could really be a factor.
Right.
Watch out for the Cardinals this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they could very easily win that division.
Yeah, I mean they were in it down to the last week or two last year.
That's right.
And a team that's pretty much there perennially, adding those two guys, I would definitely say they're right up there.
That's right. That's right.
You might even consider them the favorites right now. I think.
I would think so because when you look at what they've added, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean you got the Brewers there too, but
yeah, that's true. But the Brewers, I mean, I'm not sure that the Brewers were patching it together with pitching. I mean, I'm surprised they got as far as they did, to be honest with you.
Signed Gio Gonzalez down the stretch and for starts in the playoffs.
Yeah, for like one inning. They put him out there for one inning. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the Brewers might have been a one and done type team. I don't know that they could match that because I don't think they have the arms to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah. So your Giants, the Rockies signed Daniel Murphy.
Yes, that was a good signing for them.
He'll Coors Field, he'll like that.
He will.
It'll help his offense, obviously. Yeah. They'll be right there in the division race again, like they usually always are. Looks like, he's primarily plays second base, or he has in the past. He could probably play outfield as well, but that looks like DJ LeMahieu may be moving on then from them.
Right.
He's a free agent also.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see where he lands.
There's also been some talk about the Giants trading Madison Bumgarner.
Right.
That would be interesting.
I think that could be a deal that happens closer to the deadline.
Yeah.
Especially if they're out of it.
Right.
And they're sellers. That could be something they would do there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
How about the Dodgers? They really haven't made any moves. Well, they made that trade with the Reds, but they haven't really signed anybody of note just yet.
Yeah, that makes you think they may know something about who they're going to land here. Maybe it's Harper, maybe it's another guy.
Yeah.
They have been quiet for a team that usually talk.
Well, they've been in the World Series 2 years in a row,
That's
right?
true.
And they've got some pitching, right?
Yeah, but they've pieced their offense together a little bit too.
They
you
have.
Look at some of those World Series lineups last year.
Right.
It's kind of like guys, like almost like journeyman type guys in there that aren't really consistent superstars. Save for one or two guys maybe. But for a team that's been in the World Series the past few years, you definitely think they'd be on the lookout to add a big piece to get over the hump. But
I think they want Harper, and I think they know they're not going to get Machado back, maybe, or maybe they will. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows?
Well, they got Seager coming back too.
They got Seager coming back.
That's the whole reason they traded for Machado, because they needed a guy. But
exactly.
We'll see. I mean, it's. I think Machado even said he's going to make his decision after the new year. So should look for that here pretty soon in January.
Do you think there's any jockeying? Kind of a little bit off the topic, but do you think there's any jockeying between? All right, so right now Machado and Harper are the two biggest free agents, the big names.
Right.
Do you think there's any unspoken competition between them to see who signs first or who won't sign first? In other words, is one waiting for the other to make a decision, or does that really?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily does. You hear sometimes the term set the market, the big free agent signs and it kind of falls into place.
Right, and then you have the dominoes.
I don't know that that's really happened, because both of those guys are considered the top, so I don't know that one needs to wait on the other.
Right.
And I'm sure they're looking for similar type deals. I think for some reason you hear Harper looking for a little bit bigger deal, or he may get a bigger deal. I don't know, but I don't necessarily know that's the case. But I would expect Machado to sign before Harper. That's just me. Harper, I think he could wait until late January, even early February.
Yeah.
Because look at last year, Eric Hosmer, a Boris client.
Yeah.
He signed in the first week of February with San Diego. So
right.
I don't think they're in any hurry.
Right.
So.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. I think Harper. The Nationals made a 10-year, $300 million offer to him, and he turned it down.
Yeah.
So I think he wants probably in the neighborhood of $400 million, which he's probably not going to get. Yeah. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, but then again, if you think about him coming back to the Nationals, I heard somebody on TV saying, maybe if he were to go back to them in January and say, look, how about 10 years, $330 million?
Right.
That's only $3 more million a year. They probably do that.
Probably would.
So maybe he just squeeze another $30 million out of them there by waiting. So maybe he still kind of wants to, or has in his mind that he's going to go back to the Nationals. He's just kind of waiting him out, and
that could be.
It could be too.
That could be, because you really haven't heard more talk about Machado than you have about Harper. Yeah. Interesting.
Definitely.
Real quick, let me ask you this question before we change the subject. I heard some guys talking on MLB Network, which I wanted to get your take on it, but they're talking about Machado, and he doesn't. Sometimes he doesn't run out ground balls first base. And, of course, there was that controversy of him stepping on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of these guys was saying that, he's going to give you the production in numbers, and he's going to play 155 ball games. He picks his spots as to when to. I thought that was kind of ridiculous myself. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I didn't like the quote. I'm shocked he even said the quote. In the playoffs, he said something effective. I'm not Johnny Hustle, or I'm not that's not really my game.
Yeah.
The over, I'm not going to sprint down the first after I walk. Well, that may be the case, but the fact that you'd even say that makes you look bad, first of all.
It does, right.
And another thing I think you look at is how guys in other teams perceive you. he's gotten into a lot of scraps with guys from other teams, whether
Right.
it be specifically the Red Sox don't like him.
Right.
A few other guys, the Brewers didn't like him in the playoffs.
Right.
So I think, as far as player to player around the league, he's a guy that most guys look at upon as kind of like a troublemaker, a guy they don't really have their full respect of. So I think that's a little concerning.
Right.
And just I mean, I don't know him obviously, but I just don't like his overall attitude. Like
Yeah.
you said, he seems to be a guy that picks his spots, and who's to say that if you sign him and you're in the summer, he just doesn't feel like playing one day.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't give his best effort. He's just taking games off. Which,
Exactly.
I personally, I don't think you can have that. I don't care about the production. I mean, he may end up with these 30 home runs, but
Yeah.
I don't want that. I think that's ridiculous.
I agree with that. I mean, I think you can talk till you're blue in the face to me about, they play 162 ball games and, but something, they're getting paid a gazillion million dollars to play a baseball game. And I understand you play every day. It's hard. It's like a job, but something, you're playing baseball, okay, for 3 hours a day. And I think you can give 110% for 3 hours a day, and then you got the rest of the night and the next day to relax. So I don't want to hear that picking your spots crap.
Yeah, and it's not like any of the guys today are Cal Ripken. I mean, managers are going to give guys days off.
Exactly.
If you're healthy all season, you may end up playing 155, 156 games.
Right.
You'll get a day off every couple of weeks.
Every couple of weeks, that's right.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's ridiculous.
I don't buy that. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see here what heats up once the new year rolls around, and we get closer to catchers and pitchers reporting, which is, right around the corner.
It's earlier this year too. I mean, it's probably early February, first week of February-ish, because the first spring training games, I think the 21st or the 23rd.
I think you and I, we made the comment that if you're a baseball fan, it's the best sport to be a fan of because your off season goes by like this, right? Because when their season ends, which is late October, football's going on. It's the holidays coming up, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So you blink your eye and it's January and you've only got a few weeks before the season starts again.
Absolutely.
So you don't really have to wait long for your sport. Football is like, oh my goodness, after the Super Bowl, you got to wait 6 months and it just never seems to come.
I agree. And even basketball and hockey, the actual length may not be that long, but the months of June, July, August, they just seem to drag by. It's like the dog days of summer.
That's exactly
right.
right.
Baseball, you got the holidays. It seems to fly by for sure.
It flies by. Yeah, I mean, you blink your eye and we're already ready for a new season. So that's good. So it'll be interesting here. Baseball will be picking up here pretty soon.
So now we got football. What did you want to hit on next? College or pro first?
Well, let's go. Let's do college first because we don't want to talk a lot about that because we talked some about it last time. But I just thought we want to do a quick preview of
about a little less than a week away now.
A little less than a week away as we're taping this. But those of you who are listening to it could be like within a couple days. Yeah. But either way, it's the same concept. So we've got number 1 Alabama against number 4 Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl. They'll be playing in Miami on Saturday at a little after 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then number 2 Clemson and number 3 Notre Dame playing in the Cotton Bowl at Jerry's World at the AT&T Stadium on Saturday at 4.
By the way, I don't like that name. I think it's ridiculous when people call it that.
Jerry's World. I know, yeah, it is, but he probably likes it a lot. But anyway, let's both Alabama and Clemson are heavy favorites in both games. Let's talk about Alabama Oklahoma first. I think this game is going to be probably like a 55-28 game. I think Oklahoma will score. They've got the Heisman Trophy winner in Kyler Murray. They've been able to score on just about everybody. I think they'll put some points up on Alabama. I mean, Georgia scored 28 on them. But I think Oklahoma's defense is pitiful, and I think Alabama will score probably 50 or more on them.
Do you think it's, assuming that final score is in
Close.
that range, do you think it's a scenario where Alabama maybe jumps out to a 21-0 lead, or they're always like 2 or 3 touchdowns ahead, or do you see it being close and then Alabama may pulls away in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Alabama will impose their will early, and I think it'll probably be like 14-0 Alabama or 21-7 Alabama, and then it'll kind of just go back and forth after that. I really don't believe that Oklahoma's going to take it to them right away. I think it'll be something that comes a little bit later, if that makes any sense. But I don't see Alabama having any trouble in this game. I think Georgia was able to move the ball on them because, one, they had a pro-style quarterback that was probably playing his best game of the year, in Jake Fromm, and they had a massive offensive line that just played extremely well. Georgia's running game was powerful. Oklahoma has neither one of those. I mean, Oklahoma has a quarterback that likes to run it. He can throw it pretty well, but he's not Jake Fromm,
Right.
and their offensive line is not in the same league as Georgia. So I think Alabama wins that one pretty easy. The Clemson Notre Dame game I think is going to be interesting, and I'll give you my impression of that. Everybody in the country probably thinks Notre Dame is going to get beat in this game pretty handily. Clemson is favored by I think 11 or right in that general vicinity. I think if you look at athlete to athlete, I think Clemson has better athletes than Notre Dame across the board. If you look at it that way. I think Notre Dame has the more complete team. They've been more solid than Clemson all year long. Clemson has had a tremendous defensive against the run. They've had a tremendous offensive presence on the ground. Their secondary has had some trouble, and I think there's some ways that Clemson can be had on defense. Notre Dame has been solid. They haven't been explosive or dazzling, but they've been solid. I think it's going to be hard to run the ball effectively against Clemson. Clemson has 4 defensive linemen that are all probably top first round or early second round draft picks this coming year. So I think for Notre Dame, they're going to have to. Ian Book's going to have to throw the ball well, get it out quickly, throw it to your backside of the backfield, get those big receivers involved. If you can move the ball with the passing game, that'll open up the play action a little bit. And I think then Notre Dame has a really good chance to win this football game because South Carolina exposed Clemson's secondary a little bit in their rivalry game, the last game of the season. I think they scored 35 points on Clemson. So it'll be interesting. I think Notre Dame there's things they have to do to win the game because Clemson does have pretty good athletes across the board.
Right. And you obviously follow Notre Dame closer than I do, but we were out a couple weeks ago and we ran into a fellow Notre Dame fan. And
that's right.
He thought, his quote was, he thought they could outcoach them. What do you feel about the coaching matchup?
Yeah.
Do you think Brian Kelly got a big edge there, or do you think it's kind of toss-up?
Well, I think it's a toss-up between Brian Kelly and if you look at the head coaches, I think it's a toss-up, okay? I think where Notre Dame might be able to outcoach them is maybe in the coordinator role. And what I mean by that is Notre Dame's offensive and defensive coordinators, I think, have done a really good job this year of utilizing what they've got and making adjustments, especially the offensive coordinator. They were behind Pittsburgh early in the season. They made some adjustments in the second half and were able to overcome and win that game. They were down to Southern Cal at halftime in the last game of the season. They made some tremendous adjustments in the passing game with Ian Book and were able to come back. So I think that's where you're going to get the advantage is in the coordinators. Yeah. And Notre Dame's defensive coordinator has done a really good job of knowing when to bring pressure, when not to bring pressure, and I think that's where maybe Notre Dame might have the advantage because they've had more challenges than Clemson have had during the season. Yeah. I mean, I think they've played better teams than Clemson's played.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think that's pretty fair. Predictions. What do you think? Not with your head.
My head. Okay. All right. My head. I think Notre Dame's going to win. I really do. Okay. I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be probably in the neighborhood of maybe 31-21 Notre Dame, something in that neighborhood. Okay. I really think they're going to win the game. I do have that feeling. And the reason I say that is because this is a different Notre Dame team than's been in the past. I mean, they finally have a quarterback, a guy that can throw the football and run it a little bit and can command that offense, with some ability and with some confidence. And that's something they haven't had in a while.
Yeah.
So,
and then Alabama, obviously.
Alabama, yeah. And then we'll talk about that later on, Alabama, Notre Dame.
It could be a 2013 rematch.
Yeah, let's hope not. Not the same result.
All right. So finally wrapping up with some NFL football here. Playoffs are pretty much set. I'd say about 90% set. A few things left have to happen here. Goes through some of those scenarios real quick here. AFC, you've got the Steelers and Ravens alive for the division.
Right.
So Ravens win, they win the division.
Right.
Ravens lose, Steelers win, they win the division.
Correct. Neither one of them can be the wild card.
Right. And then you've got Indianapolis and Tennessee playing to get in the playoffs. However, the winner of that game, if the Texans lose, could win the division. Or will win the division.
They will win the division.
Right.
Correct.
So you got that there.
The winner of you're exactly right. The winner of the Titans Colts game gets in the playoffs either as the wild card or as the division winner, depending.
And that'll be known by the game time because the Texans will have played already.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. They'll be known at game time.
Right. And then over in the NFC, you've got a few more seeding moves up for grabs there, right?
You do. That's true.
Vikings win, they're in, right?
Correct.
The Vikings lose, the Eagles win, the Eagles are in.
Correct.
And that's about it. The more, like I said, the more. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, I was going to say the only seeding thing, Vikings,
right.
The Vikings could potentially move up to the 5th seed if the Seahawks lose.
Right.
The Eagles can do no better than the 6th seed. That would be the only thing they could get. Right.
Okay, so you've got the.
But you've got some seeding above that too. In other words, if the Rams lose to, I think they play the 49ers, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong about that, but I think they play the 49ers. If the Rams lose and the Bears win, the Bears would get the 2nd seed because by virtue of beating the Rams. So that's up for grabs. The Cowboys are locked into the 4th seed. And then, of course, the 5th and 6th seed is still open to debate there.
Right.
So, but it's pretty well set. But I think there's going to be some interesting matchups because let's assume that things go versus chalk this Sunday. And what I mean by that is the Rams win.
Yeah.
Let's say the Vikings win,
Right.
Whatever. All right. So the Vikings then is the 6th seed, and the Seahawks win. The Vikings would go to Chicago. This game Sunday, the Vikings and the Bears play in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. They would go right back and play the Bears in Chicago in the playoffs, and then the Seahawks would go to Dallas, which I think would be a really good matchup.
Yeah.
Or if the Seahawks end up as the 6th seed and have to go to Chicago, that would be another good matchup.
That was a Monday night game in week early on, right? Week 3 or 4.
It was, yeah.
Seahawks and Bears, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and I think that would be a really good matchup. I think the Seahawks. I don't know how I want to say this. I think there's more quality football teams that are able to run the ball and play solid defense in the NFC than in the AFC. If that makes any sense.
Right.
I mean, I think in the AFC you got the Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs are struggling a little bit right now, and you got the Chargers, and you got these. You got the Patriots. You got the Texans, who don't impress me very much. So I'm not really sold on all these teams. The Ravens are the only team in the AFC that I think can play solid playoff football on the road because they got a great defense and they run the football really well. And that's what you need.
I know, but I'd much rather see Flacco playing playoff games on the road than Jackson, as far as because he's proven it, he can do it.
I agree with that. 100%. But the thing is until you can stop it, and I mean that's the thing.
Right.
But defense is the key. I mean, you got to play defense, and to me, that's what makes the Ravens scary. If I had to play them in the playoffs, is their defense. It makes the Seahawks scary. They have a great defense.
Yeah.
The Bears have a tremendous defense. Dallas has a really good defense. So those are the teams that I think are going to be the ones that are going to make a little bit of noise, you know?
Yeah. Well, the fun thing about the AFC is the Patriots aren't the clear favorite this year.
That's true.
So, I mean, it looks like it's obviously more wide open.
It is. But don't you see a scenario, and I think one of the guys on one of the talk shows this morning, and I had to chuckle when I heard it, the Patriots are more than likely going to be the 2nd seed, right? Unless they lose to the Jets, which is probably not going to happen Sunday. But so I can see a scenario where the Chiefs get upset at home in the first round, and the AFC Championship game has to go through New England. I mean, which I'd hate to see that happen.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't think we talked about some of the AFC seeding as much either, because you've got. I mean, the Texans could still get the 2nd seed, right?
They had it until they lost to the Eagles Sunday, but the only way they can get it now is they have to win.
The Patriots lose,
and the Patriots have to lose, right? So, that's not going to happen,
right? And then the Chargers, they can't. What can they do?
The Chargers can still. They're 11-4, just like the Chiefs. So if the Chiefs lose Sunday to, I want to say Oakland, maybe. I'm not sure who the Chiefs play. San Diego plays
L.A. plays Denver.
I'm sorry, L.A. Excuse me, L.A. plays Denver, don't they? And I think Kansas City plays Oakland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Check it out real quick. But anyway, while you're checking that out, if Kansas City loses Sunday and the Chargers win, the Chargers would be the number 1 seed. They would have the number 1 seed. And
Kansas City plays Oakland.
Okay. And the Chiefs would drop down to the 5th seed.
Right.
So there is still a lot to play for seeding there. Your 2nd seed is the Patriots, probably going to be wrapped up.
Right.
The 3rd seed is still open. It could be the Texans. It could be the Colts. It could be the Titans.
Yeah.
Depends on what happens there. And your 4th seed could be the Ravens or the Steelers, depending upon what happens Sunday. More than likely, the Ravens, if they can beat Cleveland, will wrap it up.
Right.
So there's still a lot to play for in the AFC.
Right.
A whole lot to play for in the AFC.
Right.
But I just don't think the AFC is quite as strong this year. If you look at teams that can travel well in the playoffs, can go through the playoffs well. I just, I guess what I'm saying is I can see it as difficult as it would be. I can see a Dallas or a Seattle or a Chicago going into New Orleans, the number 1 seed, and possibly beating them, as opposed to seeing a lower seed in the AFC go, say, into New England or Kansas City and beating them. That makes any sense?
I think more teams can do it in the NFC, but I mean, the Ravens theoretically could do it. You saw them basically do it Saturday night. The Chargers could be a high seed. They went in there.
That's true.
And with their defense and running game, were able to do it.
And the Colts, we forget about the Colts.
Colts, they started 1-5, and they could win. They could win the division.
They have, I think they might have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, people have kind of gone to sleep on Andrew Luck a little bit because he missed all of last year. But yeah, he's pretty good, and their offensive line is very good, and their defenses play extremely well. You remember the years back in the Peyton Manning era where they had no defense at all. Now they do.
Right.
So yeah, it could be interesting, more interesting than we think it is. But anyway, it'll be an interesting final Sunday, as it always is. We'll be watching The Wire and watching the Red Zone and games going back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. One last thing let's hit on, and we can talk about this, I guess, after next week too, because it'll probably start happening. But coaching changes.
Yes.
One last week coming up here. Every year there's at least a handful or more to be let go.
Right.
And I think we were going through some of them the other day. But what coaches do you think are most likely not to come back as of right now? I mean, you've got starting the AFC West, Denver, maybe, right?
I think it's pretty well certain that Denver's going to have a new coach next year.
See that.
Oakland, no. They've got Gruden. The Chargers, no. And the Chiefs, no. If you look at the North Division, it's been announced that Harbaugh's coming back. The Ravens will have him back. Tomlin will be back to Pittsburgh. Cleveland, it depends on whether they want to hire Greg Williams as a full-time coach.
Well, I think he's 5-2 or like that, right? I mean,
something like that.
He's got a case for sure to be back.
Yeah, so that could be neither here nor
right.
And the Bengals probably will have a new coach. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen there. They brought in Hugh Jackson I think he's going to end up being head coach.
I wouldn't hire Hugh Jackson.
I wouldn't either, but I think that's what's going to happen. Because he's probably cheap. He comes in, they can pay him less money.
Yeah, he doesn't exactly have a lot of bargaining power.
No. Then if you look at the South Division, the Titans coach will be back. It's been announced that the Jacksonville is going to bring back Doug Marrone.
So they all come back. Yeah.
So they'll probably all come back in that division. And in the AFC East, the Jets will have a new coach.
I think that's right. I think they're going to try to get somebody offensive-minded to help Darnold.
I think so,
Most likely there.
And then I think the rest of the division will probably all be...
I'd say that they'll be
back. In the NFC, I think, obviously in the East, the only one that might be gone is the Redskins coach, which they shouldn't, but you never know with Snyder,
Right.
But yeah, he'll probably come back. But I think you never know.
I mean, you never know what would have happened with him had Alex Smith been healthy all year.
And they've played pretty well, considering
their fourth quarterback on. Yeah.
Exactly. The North Division, the Packers will have a new coach.
Yeah.
We know that probably. Vikings won't. The Lions, no, they won't have a new coach. And the Bears definitely won't. And then if you look at the South Division,
the Buccaneers, I think will.
The Buccaneers will have a new coach. The Saints won't. The Panthers. I don't think they will, but you just never know. They might just decide. They might decide together that it's better to move on. And the Falcons, I think, might have a new coach.
Too, yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's Dan Quinn. it's the time I signed is getting to Super Bowl by you. You know, it's been a couple of years now.
Yeah.
They've performed below expectations.
Well,
I'll tell the playoffs last year, but
they did. But I'll tell you, you're right. They did make it last year. But I'll tell you what would concern me if I was the owner of the Falcons is that they're still suffering Super Bowl hangover. And that's the mark of a good head coach,
Right.
is when you lose a Super Bowl as badly as they lost that one, or as heartbreaking as they lost it. And they came back and made the playoffs, but they petered out. And then this year they've been horrible. So what's wrong with that team? It's not that different of a team. They have had a lot of injuries, though. The Falcons have had a lot of defensive injuries, which really hurt them. But they shouldn't be 4-9 or 4-10 or whatever they are, 5-10. I mean, the Falcons should be better than that.
Right. I'd agree with that.
And then in the West, the Rams won't have a new coach. The 49ers won't. The Seahawks won't. The Cardinals probably will have a new coach. Yeah.
I mean, so that's kind of our thoughts there. We can come back and see. After next Monday, they'll start. They call it Black Monday.
Black
right?
Monday, that's right.
They'll at least start then and probby continue out throughout the week. And
some of it will probably start during the Titans-Colts game Sunday night.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So we'll look forward to the playoffs this weekend in college football, and the final week to see who can solidify the playoffs in the NFL as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be a lot of stuff to talk about next week coming off the back of that. So we appreciate you joining us today on this episode of the Pressbox Podcast. As always, follow us on Twitter at PressboxPod. And be sure to subscribe on iTunes as well. You can find the podcast on iTunes or really wherever you get your podcast. Just search Pressbox Podcast and subscribe, and you'll get the latest episodes right into your podcast feed right when they're put up. So that'll do it for us here on this episode. For Ralph, I'm Joseph, and we'll see you next time on the Pressbox Podcast.